Welcome everyone back from the break. This is the perfect setup because I'm a food experience designer and I'm really happy to have you kind of replenished from the break, well nurtured, energized. So I'm really happy to be back here in Aveiro. Today I'm presenting some of my work and a kind of project that I could also offer for prototyping. And this week I'm a food experience designer who does also international project management, and I do focus on community arts and event production. So for those of you who know me from the previous Aveiro Music Tech Fest, you will know me from running around and just trying to figure things out and be how, like Michaela sometimes says, the social glue. So you might wonder, what is a food experience designer doing on a music tech fest? It's like, I'm not really doing music, I'm not kind of doing technology. I do food. And I kind of found my passion quite early on, similar as Gino before. So these stories repeat. It's something that I kind of figured it's a phase, but of course I actually didn't go into food because I wanted to find something I can do, make a living off. So I went into IT, so I have an engineer and internet and media, so it was like software engineering. And I realized I was too much stuck in front of a black mirror and just typing and looking at a screen, and I hated debugging. So I went into communications because I realized what I miss is the human interaction, the communication, engaging with great communities, like here. But it did actually kind of end up add in a master's in cognitive sciences because I realized changing perspectives and going from different disciplines is the thing that kind of engages me the most. And within the cognitive sciences, I managed to kind of sweep in that food studies perspective again. So what connects me to this community is kind of the scope of the work, how I use food as a medium to explore things that connect to our identity, to our culture. It's about knowledge transfer. It's about the human experience. So you see all those themes pop up already, also in the presentations before, how Robertina and Gino kind of explained. It's more like that real world lab that we want to engage if we want to do things that are applied. So food was kind of my medium. So when you think of art and design, I did a street food festival, and I realized, okay, people associate with oh, you do those food market, and that's so nice. And I kind of realized the irony of what do I consider street food when I go through the streets in Vienna or Zurich or I travel, and I realize, how does something that is food become something that is waste? So I would do a food design conference and try to group together experts who just offer their knowledge to change a bit this perspective. So that's just in front of my house, someone dropped some pickles, a whole coffee cart losing its coffee ground, or just a really sad and lonely but aesthetically beautiful ice cream on the staircase in Zurich. So food can also be, though, data and telling stories, because every ingredient has its texture, it has its origin, it has a color that we associate with things that come from our lived experience. So I did a really nice collaboration with Data Cuisine, for example, with an information visualizer and Moritz Stefana and Susanne Jaschko. And we would play around with the idea of using food as a medium to express information and do infographics that go into the multisensory aspects of food. And we would do that together with people in workshops and just try to kind of put that idea there and see how it kind of develops into an icebreaker, just as we do every day that we go for coffee break. So this one was, for example, this is a very interesting one, how veganism is tagged on a kind of channel, like social media and Instagram. So I think everyone who is vegan, he will like identify with the issue of people really think that's the only ingredients that you can eat when you're vegan. It has nothing to do with reality. It's ridiculous. It's just like everyone's talking about it. It's like if every vegan tries to go out for like dinner and all you get offered is avocado, hummus, sprouts, tofu, quinoa, and peanut, that does depict reality in a way, but there's just like, it kind of lacks fantasy. So, but I think that's quite interesting to look at the data sets versus how is our lived experience of it. Or a sausage fest. I really like this one. We looked at like who cooks at home and who cooks in 5-star restaurants. So it's like we use media, like food as a medium to kind of poke into those like social complexities and try to break down bigger issues to something that people can relate to from their own experience. Because no matter what you do, you might not be an expert in this field, but you can relate to it. You know that you might not agree with the politics of a culture. Might it be in Austria? It's always like discussion about like Afghan or Turkish cultures, but something that in their interaction, if you meet those people in the working place, you can relate to their kind of rootedness in their authentic belief that their mom's apple strudel or kind of dish from home is something that carries meaning. And I think this connects. So, yeah, some example from my work where I kind of really did dive into the aspect of community in food was, for example, that Vienna Food Festival. It's just like very poshy, fancy place, the best event, like the prettiest event I ever did. And it kind of connects to that notion of bustling markets, like those, like having this melting pot of different cultures, of different backgrounds, of sense of smells, and like kind of embedding yourself in this like multi-sensory surrounding and drawing from it, and what can like mean for bridging gaps. So one of the projects I'm also very proud of is like, this is a picture from last year when I was like stuck in a pandemic. I was stranded in Thailand. I know I cannot even say I'm stranded because like it's a luxury to be kind of stranded in my paradise, but it also kind of meant that I was like stuck on an island with people whose livelihood is dependent on tourism. So all the gastronomy, all the hospitality, it didn't exist. So all the workers on that island were left with nothing to do. And so we kind of created a community arts project where we started actually like planning fresh morning glory together with the community and engaging people. And the most beautiful aspect about this is that the Thai government and the Thai communities work together with the Burmese, which is already a political issue in itself. And we also managed to kind of bridge the gap with the foreigners, which is also kind of a difficult political situation to have, to be local and work with the Farangs. And we all kind of realized we sit in the same boat. There's nothing else to do, so we need to like get out there and take care of each other. And so kind of food allowed me and empowered me to do that. And I also had a social business restaurant, for example, where it's more a it was conceptualized as a stepping stone program to help people who have difficulties getting back on the job market, to empower them through the means of food. And just because like gastronomy is like weirdly one of those like trades where you can like go into without seeming no prior experience, but it actually helped them to soothe their kind of past stories and like bring something to the table, and that would be their own dishes, their stories of culture, and there would be people who are 50 plus and went bankrupt, or people who are day release prisoners who still like have to serve a sentence, but they can come out to work with. So this is one project that I've been very proud of as well. So what I'm bringing into this, there was like one project and one question is like, why am I here? I think this is a question that a lot of us can relate to. Considering it's like when I kind of realized I have to go on the stage after you, I was just like, oh, my inner self was just like, oh, I'm getting absolutely anxious. And how we as artists, we as creatives, and some of us even still struggle with identifying. Can I say that I'm an artist? Can I like do that? It's like where it's like in what kind of space am I navigating? So I think, how do we overcome these notions of being overwhelmed and decide that we want to move on because there's a gut feeling of we want to move into the same direction? So when I heard about, actually, ta-da! There's actually like a point that I wanted to make. So what subsumes being here for me is embedded in this picture. Can you tell me what interpretations would you give when you see this? What kind of emotions and notions are hidden in this picture? Okay. Curiosity, yes. Being intrigued, yes. I kind of felt like I really liked the playful joy that like the blonde one behind the guy trying this. It's like expressing. So this is a group of, I guess it was friends, who were at the festival and they tried snails with garlic butter, and it's just like something that, yeah, they won't do that. But it was more like going into the introspection, like what do I think of this dish? Then like feeding back into what does he think about that dish? And just like this curiosity and playfulness and just like inviting people to engage with something. So I think these notions connect everything that I've been doing the past years to what I think this community is like doing in the process, no matter what's your specialty, whether you're a musician or you're a tech guy or you're an engineer and you just like make things happen. It's always like there's like a common humanity that I think is very important. And when I heard about the theme of Just Ocean, I thought about like really big aspirations of like topics of like climate change and sustainability and all those like huge buzzwords, and something that is so big and overwhelming that I have to admit, when I hear those things, it's like I feel lost. I don't know how to start this. How do we transform big aspirations to small tangible things where we kind of have the belief that they're significant enough to start a process, and we do this jointly. So I had the luxury to kind of tinker about this already with the notion of food, because me and my friend Urška Galot, it's like she's a Slovenian artist, we grouped together and we kind of started this research project, Flavor of Compassion, for the Vienna Biennale. So we've been hosted at the Museum for Angewandte Kunst in Vienna. We got supported by the Wirtschaftsagentur Wien. Yes, I'm totally doing like advertisement now. And we're also part of the Vienna Design Week. And we thought about this aspect of what does sustainability mean to us? And to me, it was social sustainability. I work the best in between those like topics. So for me, like the social stickiness, like how we get together and collaborate, how we overcome those anxieties or those struggles and overcome our own like, even like this kind of feeling of, I overheard it today, imposter syndrome. Like the notion that we come into this room and we feel like there's so many amazing people. How do I match this? How do I fit into this? So we wanted to look at compassion, because one of the buzzwords that I also hear a lot these days is empathy. It's a topic that we kind of focused on Aveiro 2020, so I see this as a kind of continuation. Empathy is such an amazing kind of, it has this potential to go into something that we understand. It's like this description of putting yourself into the shoes of others. But also from my own experience, I sometimes get the feeling empathy also has the potential to drain you. Sometimes it can feel like an abyss to feel someone else's feeling, but don't know how to act. So, interestingly, in the studies, compassion is, wrong slide. I'm just gonna do it without. Compassion is understood as empathy in action. So the interesting kind of differentiation there is like, compassion is something that we can train. Compassion is described as, for example, you want to alleviate someone else's suffering, and you do it by acting. So you can transform it into something that is a call for action. And it can be the little things. It's not only compassion towards others, it's also compassion towards ourselves. And it connects to this notion of there's a big change we want to achieve. There's a struggle and complexity that we want to tackle. So how do we do this? Compassion is oftentimes in my conversation also described with the notion of compassion is something that is considered warmth, social warmth. So there's a social climate change, and that showing someone the cold shoulder is something that creates distance. It creates distance towards ourselves and towards others. And like exploring this notion of, we're just at the tip of the iceberg, things are melting, so all those kind of sensations and metaphors come back rushing to us when we were discussing about like how do we want to kind of approach this research project on compassion through food. So we did use some ice creams. We bribed our participants in public space, like people who wouldn't know what we're dealing with. They just know it's like, okay, you do some Vienna Biennale participatory stuff, you go on the public street, you don't have a real target group, you have to like approach strangers and just want to kind of poke some inspiration on how they might think of climate change or sustainability in their daily experiences. So we figured if we offered them ice cream, they should come. And so we started discussion with this medium. We asked them to share stories of compassion from their personal life and to project some of these notions of compassion or lack of compassion into this ice cream. Then I gave them a burner into their hand, like one of those creme brulee guns, and asked them to like, okay, now we can do something about it. Like we're talking climate change, so maybe you can warm up this notion of coldness that you experienced in the example that you offered. So it was a very fun activity. You can totally reach the children with that. She was like having a blast. We were able to kind of just start a discussion from personal experience, and I think that was the most giving interaction for us, because we realized you cannot achieve things when people cannot relate to it. So again, compassion as empathy in action, and it's basic to repeat how we treat ourselves, how we treat others, exploring daily actions, these notions of curiosity and play, and that's basically something that I would also kind of, for us to embrace, because it's like for those of you who are not seasonal, like first MTFers, I think you kind of already get the notion that this is a safe space where you can engage in this. But for the ones who are like here for the first time, it will be overwhelming. There will be struggles, as Michaela pointed out this morning as well. And yeah, so it's like very interesting to go into this playful exploration and just like see how do we move further and collaborate with those amazing people when at the beginning we just feel it all. So yeah, compassion in the creative process is basically my new thing now. I decided it this year, and I feel like it's like now that I engaged with it, I will never be able to shake it off again. It's more like a life choice than a job description. And yes, I would like you to just embrace venturing out together, exploring with our senses. For me, it's like food, but it doesn't have to be. Sometimes it's just a means to an end. The same as music, technology. So I think it's a luxury to have so many people in this room, in this community, who share joint visions. And we all have our kind of individual perspectives and kind of aspirations and skills, and just like getting together and do this in a group. I think it's not a secret ingredient. I think it's the process. So I'm really happy to be here. I will also be grouping up with Monica to kind of propose some prototyping into that direction of like foraging in our environment, doing something with fish leather. I think I totally need to do that strawberry DNA extraction with the vodka. So it's like, I want to poke you guys on that one. So, and everyone who's like interested in hearing me more, just like, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere this week, so just poke me. Yeah, thank you.